once said that pastor's ministry really begins in the home, and we have a responsibility to minister to our families in some ways first, or that there would be a priority there. And I've been blessed to serve in churches that encouraged me to invest in my family and spend appropriate time doing that. But not all pastors will enjoy that. In fact, some who will watch this maybe in churches where they push back against, or at least subtly try to encourage the pastor to spend less time at home and more time, doing other things in church ministry. What would you say to a guy in a difficult situation like that, who wants to honor the Lord and lead his family, but may experience some pushback from the church?
Well, I would say in 25 years of pastoral ministry for me, I served in 5 different churches, and none of them really actively encouraged me to be with my family. And it came in the form of the way it does often, and that's it's not they're telling you to not, but they create a work environment that makes us all workaholics and expects all of us to work the same way in that way. So I had to try to figure out how to make that work. And there's a lot of pastors that are experiencing that. The church won't outright say, the church comes first, not your family. But what they expect of you, if a pastor gives into it, it will create that environment. So when we talk about the push and pull of the pressures that a pastor feels in his own heart, that's one of the places a pastor has to be most aware of what's happening, because we will naturally gravitate to just work and go to church all the time and be away from our families, because our families understand that's part of the sacrifice, part of the cost of ministry. But to your point, most churches get way out of balance with this. And if a pastor doesn't push back, if he's not aware, he's got to fight for his time for his family, he'll just get sucked into the patterns of all.
It's a really good distinction. I think if you ask church members, do you want the pastor to invest in his family first? They all say yes.
Of course, yes.
But then they respond, and the expectations they lay on the pastor push back against that. But I think it's another place where plurality of eldership is so important, that you have other faithful men who will help to protect you from that, to carry the burden of responsibility with you, and then be able to ask questions and look at your schedule and the way you're spending your time and investing your time to make sure that the family's a priority.
Yeah, the most important part of and why we have a whole week around this is that a lot of times what is most important is the pastor needs to be aware of what's going on and willing to say no. And what a lot of times is, it's just hard for a pastor to say no. So you talked about that church member. They would never flat out say, no, pastor, you can't spend time with your family. It doesn't show up like that. It's, sure, I want you to spend time with your family, pastor, but if you are not at the hospital after I've been there 30 minutes, I'm going to be mad. And that's the environment that makes a pastor constantly leaving his house away from his family. When I learned how to say no in a way I didn't know how to for a lot of years, it was life-changing. And what I found is, if I let people's expectations dictate how much time I spend with my family, oftentimes I won't spend much time with them at all. So that's around the pastor's heart. That's what that means. He has to be aware of what's going on. He has to set the boundary and find the balance between, there's sacrifice, there's cost in this work. My family knows that. But also set time aside to where nobody can take you away from your family when that's their time. And that's something that changes a pastor's ministry and relationship with his family, and determines how long a family will be able to hang in there in a tough ministry situation.
Mm-hmm. Well, because often they'll endure quite a bit for a long time, but sometimes the damage that can be done to those relationships will bring a harvest a lot later. We'll reap that a lot later than it's sown. It can be very challenging. So in the short term, the wife, the family understand the sacrifices and they want to make them, but it's the long-term impact of feeling like at every turn they're being pushed aside.
My kids can still remember the moment when I stopped setting my phone next to me at dinner. And they even were troubled by it, and it started ringing. It was in the other room, and they got worried that somebody died. And I remember saying to them, they're not going anywhere if they die. This is my time with you. And it was this crazy moment where they realized that they were the priority. And I noticed a change that took place when they saw me do things that let them know, this is my time with you. Nobody gets to take you away from me in that way.
There are a few moments that are urgent that we can't put off. We have to respond. But most of the things that we need to respond to aren't quite that urgent. They can wait at least 30 minutes for us to finish supper.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's very good.